Hello and welcome to day 2 of the One project. This is a journal that I am constructing and completing within a week, and it has to do with self, with what I'm learning about oneself during this lockdown period. So this is the video about how I'm going to construct the journal, and you can see here I have a whole load of bits and pieces that I save and put in packs that I call my ration packs. These are bits and pieces of scraps that I have left over after various projects, ribbons that are left over, bits of paint wipes, all sorts of things. And I'm sure that you have the same, and you'll certainly be able to construct this journal. So here's it all sorted out, neatened out. And I've got various different sections of bits and pieces left over. This particular pack here is full of the tiniest little bits and pieces that I have left over from my pack, and in fact it's what I will construct my cover from. Then I have another wodge of bits and pieces that are middle size, and I will be using those as ephemera perhaps later on. I have a bag full here of trinkets and treasures, cards and all sorts of things that again I may use when I'm doing the actual artwork. And then I have some pieces here that are almost complete pages. You can see here they've got bits and pieces missing from them. And I thought it would be fun to actually use these as the pages within my journal. And what I'm actually going to do is glue them together and make Franken pages. I'm sure you've heard that term before. Essentially a mismatch of pages all together, which I will use to construct the inserts of my journal. Now, here is a piece of Franken paper, I guess. This is something that I very regularly do. I love it, and it gives a sort of leathery texture that I will use to make the cover of my journal. So what are you going to need to make the cover of your journal? Well, this is greaseproof paper or baking paper. In England we can get this very easily. I'm not sure you can get it on a roll in America, but you could use a roll of anything. Any paper that's nice and long that you could use to begin the project of making your cover would be good. I like to use this because it's thin, and I will be sewing into my journal cover later on, and I don't want it to get too thick so that it's tricky to use my machine. So I'm going to make a nice big sheet because I want to have enough that I don't have to worry about making it too small. And here you can see me tipping out all of those little tiny bits and pieces. You know, the ones we always save because there's always going to be a moment when. Well, today's the moment when. So I use a gloss gel medium. That's what gives this cover this kind of leathery feel. So this is a gloss gel medium. What I'm going to be doing is working on that piece of greaseproof paper, just sticking bits onto it. And you can see as I stick the paper down, I then cover it up with even more gloss gel medium. And I will essentially keep going until this whole piece of paper is completely full. At home here in England, amongst messy play that I enjoy doing every day, I am also a psychotherapist, and so I'm forever interested not only in my own process but the process of the world and how we come in and out of relationships with each other and ourself. And that is why I chose to do this project, because I have become incredibly interested in what we are learning as a human race during 2020 when the world is locked down. And this journal that I will be doing throughout this whole week is essentially me devoting some time to oneself, to what one is learning. I really want to make sure that when the world opens back up again for me, that I don't rush straight in, that I take time to, I guess, furlough myself. That's an interesting word that we're being given in England. To furlough myself from having to be as busy as I always am. And I wanted to take time to learn, to really digest what I'm learning about myself. Perhaps you might feel like giving this a go, and if you do, please do feel free to head on over to my Facebook page, a very large, warm and welcoming community where self-development and creativity are always encouraged. I'd love to see if you give this a go, you coming on and sharing your process with us. So, of course, you can see how incredibly large this gets, and it takes a good time, actually. Funnily enough, you would think that sticking would be quick, but it takes a good an hour or so to really fill this up. And surprising how far all those little scraps go. You can see that I'm layering bits and pieces up. I then get my window cleaner, my squeegee, out and just sort of gently rub all over to rub off any of the excess and get this as flat as I possibly can, though it will have some wrinkles in there. I let mine dry out in the sun. It does need a good few hours, and so I can use that time when it's drying to construct all of my papers, my signatures that I will work on. So I'm going to use a different glue, and the glue that I'm going to use is a gel matte medium. So before we used a gel gloss medium, this is a matte medium. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, I want to be able to paint and play on these pages, and if you use a gel medium, it restricts what you can use. With a matte medium, you get a matte finish, and so you can do anything with it, really. But you do need a good matte medium. Some of the cheaper matte mediums just don't adhere at all. And what I'm doing is I'm sticking these larger bits of paper to each other to form one piece of paper that's kind of a little bit bigger than an A4 piece of paper or a computer sheet. I had one sheet of paper that was almost full. You saw it at the beginning of the last section. And I wanted all of my pages to be roughly the same size. To be honest, it doesn't really matter. Because I'm not somebody that's going to give everybody finite instructions as to how to measure things. This isn't a complicated journal to make at all. And so really you kind of play around, sticking all the bits and pieces together until you have a complete set of pages. Now, I'm not completely crazy. I do realise I only have a week to do this journal, and even though it is all going to be one theme, I don't want to overwhelm myself, so I am not going to make hundreds and hundreds of pages. This is going to be quite a narrow book for me. I often have lots of pages. Certainly the journals I sell on Etsy are vast, but this is going to be quite simple, mainly because it's all one topic. So I'm going to construct these pages. I will let them dry out in the sun, and then what I chose to do actually is to gesso over them, a nice thin layer of gesso, just to knock back the vibrancy of all of these pages. That means that it gives me an opportunity to add things to them without that background clashing against everything that I add. Okay, let's have a stock take. So I've got several pages. I think I ended up with 13, something like that, pages that are obviously quite stiff and quite hard, and you saw that I covered those with gesso. I have my lovely bit of my book cover, which you can see I also ran through the sewing machine and put some cross stitches around some certain areas. And then here you can see this big bit of fabric. I've been hoarding this fabric for ages, not doing anything with it, and I thought this is the moment. So I just want to talk through the journal a little bit, the journal cover. So here's the cover, and trust me, these are going to be really rough measurements. The height of the journal will be the height of the largest piece of paper plus an inch. Actually, I ended up doing it 1.5 inches. The spine of the book will be 1.5 inches. The widest side will be the width of the widest piece of insert plus 2 centimeters. And then from the top and the bottom of the spine, I'm going to measure in 1/2 inch and put some holes, and through those holes I will be putting some ribbon. That gaffer tape that you saw, or plumber's tape that I pulled out, I'm going to put that over my journal. You're going to see me doing that in a minute now, just to reinforce that spine. Now at this point, what I have done is I have cut down the shape that I want. Now I'm going to put some gaffer tape onto it, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew my fabric onto it in sort of a quilting style. I'm going to do it in squares. So whereas before I put some patches of sewing on it with my sewing machine just to add a bit of interest, now what I do is I run this through my sewing machine with my insert fabric and just sort of go across it with straight lines. You'll see it when I take it off now. Okay, so here you can see that I've got these squares all over it. Okay, so let's work out where our spine is again, because obviously now we've sewn that fabric on. So I measured in 17.5 centimeters from each edge, and I draw a line, and I do that on both sides. And then what I'm going to do is head to the sewing machine and sew down both of those sides, and also put a really nice blanket stitch all the way round the edge. Now the reason that we put stitches in down either side of our spine is just to help this bend. This is quite leathery material, and it can do with a little bit of help to help it bend around the middle. So the next thing I need to do is work out where my holes are going to go. And the reason that we need those holes is actually I wanted to be able to pull my signatures, my pages out of my journal. I want to work on them separately because I want to be able to work on lots at the same time, and I didn't want to have to wait for paint to dry in between before I turned over pages. So I'm measuring 1.5 centimeters up from the bottom in both ends, and then I choose to have 4 holes. Actually, originally I was just going to have 3, but I choose to have 4 because I don't want any of my signatures to be too bulky. And those pages where they have dried, those Franken pages, are really quite thick and bulky. They're going to be lovely to work on later on. So I take my crocodile and I take some eyelets, and I'm just going to pierce those through, make some lovely holes, and then get some lovely metallic eyelets just to make that all beautiful. Don't you just love it when something comes together? I chose also to put some eyelets in the front and back cover as well, just to mean that I can secure this journal shut when I want to. So I have some lovely sari yarn here. You can buy bling balls from my Etsy page, which I will link in the description, which are essentially long threads of recycled Indian garments. I'm going to push those through the back and then just tie a simple double knot. Could have a bow, you could have anything. I love having loads and loads of ribbons on all my journals. If you see any of my journals I work on, you'll see all of these tassels and ribbons hanging off of them. So I'm going to use my boning tool, my bone folder, to just fold those pages over. Again, you can see there where I've gessoed them, I can still see that colour from the background. That's going to give some lovely layers. But it's paled it into the background, which means anything now that I do on top won't become a mess. It's just got a lovely kind of chalky, gesso-y background to work on. These are all various different densities. I think it's going to be great, and I really love that I'm going to be able to just pull them out of the book and just work on them as and when I want to. I can spread them all over my desk and do what I want. So here they all are, and putting these into my putting these signatures into my journal is as easy as this. You just slide them in. This is going to be such a fun journal. I really like that I've taken the time to use that material on the insert, because maybe that's one thing I'm learning about myself. I buy things just to look at. I never use them, and I must stop doing that. I really want to start enjoying the things that I gift myself. I'm going to end up putting a front tab on this cover, but for now I'm happy with where I've arrived. I really, really encourage you to spend some time with yourself during this lockdown period, and maybe you might choose to make a journal to celebrate that. Maybe you might do something else, but more than anything, I do hope that you will head on over to the Facebook group and subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you can follow along with me putting this journal together. I'll see you tomorrow.